Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Does everyone feel inspired and enlightened by the presentations this morning? I'm pretty impressed. I got to see the presentations in this room today, and I'm definitely inspired. So congratulations to everybody who presented. My name is Michelle Foley. I am part of the planning committee for the symposium this year, and we're excited about all of the new program that we're able to incorporate into the two-day event. One of the new additions is having some alumni come back and share their experience as a researcher and what they've been doing since then and how the two mix together. So who we have here today, in this first chair right here next to me is Alberto Vargas. He was an international studies major, class of 2019. In the middle is Maddeline Steward, a biological science major, class of 2016. And Bryon, Tjanaka, ICS, class of 2020. And they will each get into more detail about their experience at UCI, and you'll also have an opportunity to ask them some questions towards the end of the session. So we will just get things started with, I'll ask each of you to do a brief self-introduction, include things like your major, your graduation year, what projects you worked on. I know some had one, some had more, and then if you were involved in other things as an undergraduate. And we need to make sure your mics are on. Check that. Oh, maybe I just turned it off.
Testing. It's on.
So feel free, jump it. Is yours not on? We lose our tech people.
Testing.
Oh, hello?
Oh,
Hello.
Okay.
There we go.
Now everybody's on.
All right, I guess I can go first then. Hi, everyone. I'm Bryon Tjanaka. I am currently a second-year computer science PhD candidate at the University of Southern California. And during my time at UC Irvine, I was a computer science major. I worked with two labs. First was the Mobley lab, where I worked on molecular or like drug discovery. And then I also worked with the Intelligent Dynamics lab on reinforcement learning. Other activities I was involved in, I was part of the ACM chapter here at UC Irvine, where we did a lot of programming competitions. And yeah, overall, I think I learned a lot from my time at UC Irvine, and it's been really relevant in my research.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maddeline Steward. I graduated class of 2016 with the UCI School of Biological Sciences. Since then, I've done a master's in biomedical science. I'm currently a clinical research associate with Massimo. It's a medical device company located here in Irvine, but I've also worked with other medical device companies such as Edwards Life Sciences in Irvine as well. They specialize in cardiovascular technology. During my time here at UC Irvine, I was part of the UCI Clinical and Translational Preparatory Research Program. It's a mouthful, but it's with the UCI School of Public Health, and with that, I did a lot of rotations with different clinical sites, shadowing different clinical research professionals, as well as their PIs, principal investigators. And then I was also involved with the UCI Division of Career Pathways, formerly known as the Career Center, as a lead peer consultant there. Thanks.
Wow, so much. So many different things. I forgot what it was like to be in college. Hi, everybody. My name is Alberto Vargas, class of 2019. I double majored in political science and international relations. My research project at the time when I was here on campus was immigration then and now. I think if many of you remember, former President Donald Trump was elected during that time. So immigration for me has always been a hot topic and very near and dear to my heart because my parents are Latino immigrants from Mexico. So at the time I got involved with UCDC, and through a pilot program at the time, which is also now known as, and Sharon reminded me, I think it was Capital Research Initiative. We got an opportunity to really just travel on the East Coast in New York, and look at some of the different museums in the area, visit the United Nations, and just look at a holistic perspective of what immigration was from the beginning of time, I guess you can say, in the founding of the United States and what it looks like now. In terms of involvement, I am one of the founders for Hermanos Unidos, the UC Irvine. So we founded that familia here in October of 2016. I was also previously the vice president and an external representative for the Latino Business Student Association. And lastly, from what I remember, I was involved with the Orange County Hispanic Youth Chamber of Commerce. So I served on their youth board during my time here at UCI.
Busy lives. And I find that to be true for a lot of our students. You lead very busy lives, so good for you, exploring a lot of different things. So I'd like to ask each of you how you selected the research projects that you found yourselves in, and how did you find those faculty mentors?
I guess I can speak to that first. I think a lot of how I found research was sort of just knowing people and kind of getting a bit lucky. So I think if you expand, you try to get to know as many people as possible, then that it's going to be luck, but because you have so many different chances, one of them should work out. So in particular, in my first year, I went to talk to Gregoria, one of the UROP counselors. I think she's here today, and she helped me find an advisor for my first project. And that was a project that was studying social perceptions of robots. And then in my second year, I decided that I wanted to do something a bit more technical. And it so happened that one of my friends had another friend who was looking for an undergrad researcher. And even though she was chemistry, she still wanted to look for an undergrad who could do computer science. And so that was sort of a random connection, but I ended up doing research with them and learning a lot of skills from there. And then finally in my third year, I stumbled upon a new professor who had just arrived at UC Irvine, Professor Roy Fox. And it turned out that since he had just arrived, he was looking for students. And so I contacted him and got to know him and started doing research on robotics and reinforcement learning. So I think overall, just keeping all my options open, always being on the lookout, that's what really helped me to get research opportunities.
I definitely resonate with a lot of your answers on being open. So as far as approaching my path with finding research, as I mentioned, I did it with the UCI School of Public Health. Although I was a bio major, I felt drawn to a lot of the projects that were being done with UCI School of Public Health. So one in particular was with the Center of Autism. I worked a lot with children. I was primarily interested in the outpatient setting of research. I was drawn to that more than I would say the lab setting. And so that was part of one of the reasons why I decided to do that. Another thing was, again, just being open to different opportunities, because with research, it's so broad. And although I was drawn to certain PIs and their interests with research, sometimes the opportunities aren't always there. So definitely casting a wide net and reaching out to several mentors. There's so many different faculty here at UCI, and I feel like that was one of the biggest things that I realized with research. You just have to really cast a wide net.
Yeah, I agree with both of them. I actually did not get an opportunity to do research until probably my second to last quarter here on campus, and that was through UCDC with our project of immigration then and now. I think to their point is you do have to cast a wide net and really just be open to opportunities and go looking for them. I think just that project itself fits so perfectly for me at the time as I was figuring out what I really wanted to do. Post-grad and working in government, which I'll touch upon a little bit later, but it just came naturally. And our professor, or one of the professors that I had for poli-sci, Professor Matthew Beckman, decided to be our faculty advisor along with Sharon, who then ran the UCDC program at the time, and it just we went to them for advice, but a lot of it was self-guided for us. A lot of the students that I worked with at the time with this research project, the majority of us were affected by immigration, whether it was firsthand being a DACA holder, a TPS, what's it called? TPS holder as well, or having immigrant parents, right? And so just being in the nation's capital, I think just allow us to put that all together. But if there was anything I could change from that is probably exploring those opportunities to do more research and being more engaged with the faculty and professors on campus. So definitely cast a wide net and look for those opportunities because they're there.
Wonderful, thank you. So how did your research experience impact your career decisions?
I guess I can.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'm a PhD student, so it definitely led to my current research area. I do research in robotics and AI, specifically like teaching robots like different behaviors and also human-robot interaction at USC. So yeah, my research, I mentioned I did research on reinforcement learning, so that definitely impacted what I chose.
Did you anticipate going into a PhD program before you started doing research?
Yes. So I guess from the time I came in, I was already anticipating that I would go to some kind of grad school, probably a PhD. I actually took the GRE the summer before I came to UC Irvine because the scores are valid for 5 years. And I wanted to plan ahead because if I had to take the GRE during my time at UC Irvine, it would have been much more hectic.
Nearly a perfect score in every single category.
Thank you.
I guess for me, it was a little different. So I didn't find my passion in research until later on. Although I was involved in different opportunities during my undergrad, I actually was pre-med for most of my undergrad. However, I wanted to really keep my options open because I had so many different interests, from really being in business, or was it research, or was it really being a physician? So I really, really wanted to keep my options open. So I tried to participate in as many different opportunities that I could. So following my undergrad, I was drawn to a medical device company. As I mentioned earlier, it was with Edwards Life Sciences. They specialize in cardiovascular technologies, which as an undergrad, I was always drawn to the pathophysiology when it came to the heart. And so I thought, well, why not try this out? I'm combining science as well as being in the corporate world. And I realized I was really drawn to that. And I just kind of kept chasing that, but at the same time, I enjoy learning. And that is what brought me back to getting my master's degree later on. And then since then, I've continued on the path of clinical research, now with a different therapeutic area. With Massimo, it's non-invasive hemodynamic monitoring devices. But I realized that with clinical research, what I enjoyed was the scope of work. So what I do now is a lot of protocol development, which is clinical research study design, something that I would have never thought to be involved in. I found that I have a love for scientific writing and communications, and that's something that comes out in my work.
For me, I think it was more along the lines of trying to figure it out. I think the research program that we did with UCDC and being part of UROP really solidified the type of career I wanted to go into post-graduation, which was federal government, and just working within that bureaucracy. I got to experience Washington, D.C. as a student, and later went back probably, I want to say maybe 3 months after, to work full-time for a civil rights organization, or the largest Latino civil rights organization in the country, known as the League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC. And I got to work at a really large level with different Latino communities across the different states, Texas, Puerto Rico, parts of Maryland and Virginia, and really look at the way that the Latino community was affected, not just in being low-income communities, but being immigrants, right? And so that research tied in very perfectly into the type of work that I did with LULAC. But that career path with them was a little bit short-lived, and decided to make a turn back to California. It was difficult to be in a place that people don't look like you, and much less at that point in time, our federal government was very fragile. So to see that immigration became such a very controversial and politicized topic, kind of for me was a little bit heartbreaking, right? And so I figured I'd make a turn back to work for California state government and make a more direct impact to the community that I look to serve. And some of those future aspirations that I'm still looking towards are law school and eventually being an elected official one day. So that's how the research has played into my career now.
Are there skills that you developed through your undergraduate research that you're still using today?
I can,
sorry.
Just wanted to jump in on this one because, as I mentioned, I fell into scientific writing and communications with the job that I do now. I realized I have a really eager passion for scientific writing. So I don't know if some of you have taken the course Bio 100 if you're in the School of Biological Sciences. It's a class that I felt has translated into my work today. In protocol writing, you have to basically write and draft and do literature reviews. When you do these protocols, you're basically designing a clinical research study that'll be executed at different hospital sites. So that's something that I brought with me to my job now, along with just the skills of interacting with people and communicating with people from the outpatient settings.
For me, I definitely learned a lot of, I think, both hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills, for example, many of you are probably familiar with Python programming. So I learned a lot about Python in my research labs, and that directly translated into my research efforts at USC now. Also, I guess more on the softer side, like how to work with researchers, how to speak with them, I guess how to write more, or how to get better at writing, and also asking for feedback.
Definitely the interaction and networking piece. I think from all of this here, you can probably take away that the research that we did here opened a lot of opportunities. And networking and having people skills itself is a very undervalued skill, I think, that people don't realize how far it will take you. More, hard skills or hands-on was definitely research and being analytical and the writing piece of it. I think in any type of job field that you go to, you have to have some type of, writing skill and analytical, perception of what you're doing. And so when you're looking at legislation, for example, you have to be able to dissect that quickly and turn that around to the agency or elected official that you're working for. So definitely those were some of the big takeaways.
Great. And so I'll give you one last question or opportunity before we turn it over to the audience. But what advice do you have for students considering or currently involved in research?
I guess I can start. Have fun with it. I think, for those of you that are seniors here in the room, and for those of you that are not, regardless, have fun with it, because these type of passions that you have sometimes don't always translate into the type of career field that you want to go to. They sometimes pivot and change. But what I will say about that is those experiences, those failures that you have while doing research, while learning from it, do carry on. And those are invaluable skills and traits that you pick up that you will use as you move forward in your career path. So have fun with it and just enjoy it, because once you're out of here, it's a different ballgame, trust me.
I definitely agree with that. I would say, as all of us have mentioned, is just being really open to everything. Until now, although I have my own interests with certain therapeutic areas that I'd like to do clinical research in, something that I'm also interested in is chasing the different skills that I can acquire in clinical research. So, but being a clinical research associate, we monitor the data that hospital sites or clinical sites collect. And so I realized that with that job, you can do a variety of things such as study design. So be open to the different opportunities that clinical or research, whether clinical or translational research can present. You may find that you have interests in the corporate setting, in a lab setting. You just never know. So be open and enjoy it. And yeah.
I definitely agree with those points, and I'll add that on the more logistical side, definitely try to plan for your future when you're doing research. So sure, your research is really good right now, but how can you ensure that in the future you'll be able to continue doing research? For example, how can you plan to apply for grad school? How can you get the recommenders for grad school? Also, how can you apply for fellowships? I want to shout out the Scholarship Opportunities Program here. They're very willing to help you like apply to some of the big fellowships like the NSF fellowship, for instance. And having a fellowship in particular can be really helpful in grad school, because then you they cover the funding for you. So you don't have to worry about like always having to do a TA-ship or RA-ship.
Thank you. Great advice. So now it's your turn. What questions do you have? Just raise your hand. Jared has a microphone and he'll come over to you so that we can all hear you clearly.
Hi, I have a question for Maddeline specifically. How did you know you wanted to go into industry before your master's and not the other way around?
That's a really great question. So as far as going into industry, I wasn't sure. So initially I was pre-med, but there were so many different interests that I have, such as working in corporate, because I enjoy working and being in that environment. But at the same time, I had other interests such as research. So one, I think initially was to start paying off some of my undergrad loans. Two was my interest in getting experience. Three was just kind of knowing that I didn't want to rush into a program right away. I really wanted to be selective, which I would say is important for any graduate program you're interested in, because once you commit, it is a big commitment, whether it's a master's or a PhD. It's a lot of time, effort, and energy. So you want to be selective. And so part of what I knew was if I really wanted to continue my learning, I wanted to make sure it was in the field that I was interested in. And so one way that I did that was to go into industry before applying for a program.
So being that I want to be a research professor and make startup companies in the future, hopefully, which order would you guys suggest going into industry first or pursuing academia?
I guess I can touch on that a little bit. I definitely would say get the work experience first. You know, there's really no cookie cutter way of going about what you want to do with in your, or what you want to do with your career. It just depends on what you would like to do first. Do you want to get that work experience and then go back to school and pursue your aspirations and goals? Or do you want to go straight into or stay in academia and keep going on with that, right? It just depends on the industry that you are trying to work in, right? A lot of people also tell you that if you do decide to take time off from, you know, going back to school and working, there usually is a gap of time, right? And you want to make sure that you don't get distracted from that goal that you have. So it just depends on what you really want and how you can hold yourself accountable and stay disciplined during that time.
I would also encourage you to talk to Michelle Kine. She's our associate dean, and she could probably give you some good advice related to that too.
One thing that I'll add, I don't know which order is correct, but one thing I do tell people if they're going to like take a break and they know they want to go back to grad school later on is you might already have people who you'd want to ask for recommendations, but in a few years they probably won't remember you. So make sure to try to ask them in advance, can you write a recommendation letter for me now, and then store it away.
I'd like to add on that as well. Just, you know, having industry experience, there is no cookie cutter way, as kind of we've all touched on. It really depends what you're drawn to at this certain time, but there's definitely a need to be intentional about what experiences you choose to pursue, whether it's a graduate program or working right away. There is an element of needing to plan ahead, but I have seen it, having been in industry, I've seen it both ways where people go straight into a PhD and then enter industry. There's opportunities either way. So I wouldn't say starting in industry versus PhD, there's an advantage over the other. I feel like a lot of it is, how you end up acquiring those experiences and being able to tell your story so that when you apply for that next opportunity, it's aligned with your values and your career goals.
Hi, I had a question about like just expectations. What do you guys think is the biggest difference in expectations in industry versus academic research?
I think so. In industry, I think it seems like it would be more towards like the company's business needs for research, whereas in academia, it's kind of like as long as you can get some funding for it, you're like much more free to pursue your own research and kind of choose your own direction. I think that would be the biggest difference.
I agree with that difference. So I think I touched on therapeutic areas earlier. Different companies have different, especially if you're doing clinical research or if it's like pharmacological research, different companies are in different therapeutic areas. So they might be pursuing different needs within that research. So for example, cardiovascular research, with Edwards, they do transcatheter heart valves to help patients with aortic stenosis. So if there's a need there in that field in medicine, that company might, value that need, and that's kind of what they push towards, versus in academic research, it might be more individualized to what you would like to pursue as a PhD, if I'm not mistaken, or the mentor that you're working with.
I'm not familiar with if the other two of you did an internship or not, but I'm familiar that Bryon has, and I know that he interned with Google for 3 consecutive years. And I was just wondering, how important do you think your internship was as far as pursuing, your PhD?
Yeah, I think the internships were really helpful for me. Like they built a lot of hard skills for sure. So in particular in computer science, something that isn't really taught in undergrad is how to be like a better software engineer, like how to have good practices and work with other people on these like big projects. And so I think interning at Google really helped me to realize that to learn those skills, because they have like so much more code than you would ever see in undergrad. And then going into PhD, like I see a lot of people around me, they really struggle to like write like good maintainable code, whereas I like to think that because of my experience at Google, it's really helped me to better understand like how to do that. And like in particular, there's this one project where I released an open source library, and I think working at Google really helped me to like understand how that can be better done.
I think it's important whether you decide to stay in the workforce or you decide to pursue, academia. It helps to really figure out, is this the type of career that I want to continue in, or am I going to take a full, 360, 180 pivot and switch to something else, right? And so I definitely did a lot of internships during my time here, and it took me a while to really figure it out. I even did an internship post-grad. And it's still within the realm of public service, but I went from corporate to public, so you just got to go with it. And I don't think there's anything out there that won't teach you a lesson. So.
Any last question? Okay, we'll do one more.
So I have a specific question for Bryon, right? Is that your name? Sorry.
Bryon.
Bryon. So I'm in my 3rd year right now, and I'm considering doing PhD in computer science specifically. So do you have any advice on the whole application process?
start now.
Yeah, yeah, because I'll start this summer, I guess. Yeah.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
No, I'm not. I'm international student.
Okay. Yeah, otherwise I would have suggested looking into like NSF fellowship, etc. There might be other fellowships that you can still look into. But yeah, start now, start looking around. Email professors if they, like at the schools, if they say that you can. Like if they specifically say on their webpage, don't email me, then don't email. But yeah, look around, explore a bunch. CSrankings.org is pretty helpful for finding good schools in the area that you want. Pass your statement of purpose and whatever else you write, like pass it around to everyone and have them all review it, like friends, professors. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all your fabulous advice and sharing your story with us today. I know it takes a lot to come to campus, give up a day in your regular life of work and studies. So we really appreciate the time and hope that you can hang out for a little bit for lunch and maybe even into the networking and awards later today. So we are about to go into our lunch space. We have box lunches available directly across the hall where the coffee and beverages were this morning. If we could please let our presenters get theirs first, because they're going to start the poster session at 12:30, whereas visitors could maybe take a few extra minutes to finish your lunch before going into the poster session. So just be kind to them and let them go. But before you move, let's give them a big round of applause. And thanks again. We appreciate everybody being here today.
Awesome.